I always have this quote at the beginning because I think that it frames, it's from a technology specialist at a school in Missouri. And I think it frames remote learning as an opportunity and as an opportunity to think about digital equity around what students can make. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is how we can actually like take advantage of a virtual learning environment to give students like multiple ways to learn and hopefully provide additional digital equity. Some things are hard. Part of what this topic or this talk doesn't cover are things like internet. It's part of what makes it hard to have an equitable digital program is like lack of internet access that every kid has. If anyone does have a solution for that, definitely share it here. It's something that I think about. It's something that we haven't really found a good solution for yet. So I know there are lots of models around like virtual learning this spring and this summer. And some of them are more asynchronous, kids learning on their own and then coming back together to talk about things. One of the things that we've found has worked really well has been to put aside like dedicated time where kids meet because then they don't have an extra thing to plan. It might be less relevant over the summer, but in the spring, a lot of kids were facing this like time management problem. They suddenly had to like manage their time to like watch YouTube videos and like figure out when to work on things. And it works a lot better when it's like, all right, now 3 p.m. We're all getting on this call and we're all going to code together. A good time has seemed to be about 45 minutes. It's enough time to learn something and not enough time that you start to lose them. Sometimes with more advanced classes, we do see an hour or 2 hours. But any programs that we run, we generally tend to lose kids in a virtual environment around 45 minutes. The exception to that is sometimes we'll stay and like fix code for specific students. So sometimes one student will be having like debugging problems or want to share their work or talk about their work. And when that happens, we always give students the option, like you can leave now, but if you want, you can stay. And I would say about 50% end up staying and want to watch a student debug their project or see everyone's work, which is really interesting. But I don't expect them to like learn anything after the 45-minute mark. The other cool thing about like virtual clubs and virtual summer camps is that there's suddenly like multiple ways for students to learn versus when everyone's in a classroom together, it can feel more like we all have to do the same thing. So when we have our virtual coding club, we always tell students, you can code along with us or you can just watch and then code on your own later. And we also try and give them like different ways to access the coding tutorials that we go over that day. So we'll have slides, we'll also have text instructions, we'll also try and provide a recording of the club. And so we're trying to, like whatever best way you learn, we wanna be able to give you all of those resources. And some of them, like the recording, like we're doing it anyway. So it ends up being easier to provide those resources and those access than it is in an in-person setting, which is kind of cool. The other thing that we have found to be super, super important, especially remotely, is to use things like goals and milestones, like things like badges, things like celebrating when they've come to more than 3 clubs. And that's partially because they don't see each other in the same way as if they were in person. They don't, oh, we have more people coming in. They're not able to see their own progress in the same way when they're all in person as when they're all in person. So trying to provide those like from the instructor or from the summer camp and celebrating students that have been there more than like 3 times or have made more than 10 projects, or who've learned certain things. Like stop everything and be like, you learned conditionals today and like we're going to celebrate. Because otherwise it can be hard to keep motivated, and sometimes it can feel like you're learning in a silo, even if you're all at the same lecture together. Just to build on that, it's important to feel like it's important to create what feels like a learning community. So places for them to share and ask questions. The whole idea of like having a club or a summer camp is that students don't feel like they're learning alone. If they wanted to do that, they could just watch a YouTube video. But the fun part of learning together is that if you get stuck, you can ask questions, and that you can see each other's work, and that you can feel like you're around other kids. Some of the ways that we recreate that are when kids run into problems, like when they're having trouble debugging, I will stop everything and be like, here, like so for our club, we use Zoom. Our partners use all different video chats, but using Zoom as an example, we can stop everything and be like, all right, post your code in the chat. And then I'll like comment my code out and paste theirs in. And sometimes if it's like a weird bug, I'll just find it. But if it's one I think that the other kids can find, I'll be like, all right, where's the bug? And then it can take up to 5 minutes, but we'll talk through it. And 20 kids will work together to find the bug in the student's code. So it can feel like they're helping each other. And it can feel like they're participating in other people's programming process. And I think it's worth losing like quote unquote teaching time for that. Because it's still a teaching moment. They're still debugging and reading code, and they're doing it in a way that feels like they're connecting with other kids. The other thing that I haven't found a great solution for yet, but I think is really important, is to have a place for students to share and see each other's work and comment each other's work outside of class as well. So there's always sharing in the moment, but you want to give students a space to think about their projects, and to talk about concepts afterwards, and to share and ask questions if they are taking time to learn on their own outside of a summer camp or a club. We've tried like a forum. They're not super active on it. They prefer to talk like on Zoom, like during club. So we're still trying to figure out exactly what the best solution for that looks like, but I think it's really important. The other thing that works really well is to give students prompts around different projects. So we have tutorials on VidCode, and some of them are like code a meme. So learn about variables while coding a meme. And we find that students are more creative when you give additional prompts around that. So instead of just like, all right, code a meme, which some are fine with, but all right, code a meme sharing a learning from home tip. Code a meme about your, for adults ones, I did like a cybersecurity tip, because they were like learning about that in their meeting. And they're always basically 100% of the time more creative when given this additional prompt. And it makes the whole experience just more fun. And when they can incorporate their interests into that, so when they can make projects about Minecraft or sports or pugs, which is all things that we've seen students bring into the coding projects in our clubs, it makes the projects feel more like theirs, and it builds those connections between like code and creating with code and the things that they are already caring about and thinking about and making and sharing with their friends. Yeah, the last piece of this is just to celebrate student work. And that sort of ties back into the goals and the milestones. But this is more specifically about their work. So at the end of every day of summer camp or at the end of every club, once again, stopping everything and having students actually share the work that they made. And no matter what stage it's at, whether they actually followed along or not, celebrating it. So in person, it's really easy to have students actually share their work themselves. And it's an opportunity for them to use the vocabulary that they learned, and they can stand up and they can talk about their projects, or you can do a gallery walk and you can walk around. It's harder, it's more difficult virtually. I personally don't let students share their screen. Maybe you have a smaller class size and we'll be less conservative about that. But instead, we're all working online, so students just share the links to whatever they create. And then I open them, and I kind of take on that role of the student, essentially. So I use the vocabulary and like talk about their work. So I'll say like, you used incredible variable names here, and then I'll say why. Or I'll talk about their color choices, or I'll talk about like how they organized their code, and I'll call out the things that they did really well. And like I said, even if they like didn't really follow the tutorial and we added 5 things and all they added was like a rectangle and like text that says slaw, which did happen, I'll still celebrate it. Obviously, it would be different in more of a school setting where you had to hit certain milestones. But in the coding club that we work with, or that I've been running, we have students between the ages of 8 and 15. So we're gonna have just students going at very different paces, and kids at very different levels coming in. And I'm just sort of glad that they're like learning and coding and choosing to come back each week. So always trying to celebrate their work, and like bring the concepts back into what they actually created. Cool, let's see. So yeah, something that ties into that is just having like low floors and high ceilings. So in the case that I just described, where you have 8-year-olds and 15-year-olds sort of in the same virtual space, creating projects that cater to both. So giving projects that don't break easily, and have sort of like a spectrum of possibilities of what they can make. So a project, for example, if you're teaching conditionals, giving them a project where like a classic one is like a newscast where you use a conditional to have like text scroll in, setting it up so that if a student isn't there yet and all they're doing is placing graphics around, like using X and Y coordinates, and like using variables, and maybe only like the older kids are able to use the conditionals, creating a space where they both have a finished project at the end. So in the case of like, if you were like designing a website, having, let's say like 10 elements that students can access. And if they only use 3, they still have a finished product. And something that I always try to provide as well is a sandbox experience. So if students have learned other concepts, they're able to bring those into the projects that we're working on. So that's most of it. Does anyone have any questions? Like I said, I am coming from VidCode specifically. If anyone wants to drop into our coding club, I will send you the link. You can watch how it goes for us. It's been something we've been offering for free since schools shut down, and it's been really extraordinary to see students come back week after week and learn. All right, well, if nobody has any questions, like I said, you're all welcome to drop into club. And if anyone does have any questions after this, if you are setting up your own clubs and want to talk, this is my email. Yeah, club is just open. I kind of think of it like a TV show, essentially, like a library asked once if we have stats on it. We don't. It's just a TV show. It's just something we have while school has been closed, and we're going to continue it over the summer. Everyone's welcome. And yeah, if you are starting your own clubs and have any questions or want to talk, my email is there. And I hope everyone has a great week.